But just, I want to welcome you all here today. I'm Saoirse Brady, I'm the Executive Director of the Irish Penal Reform Trust. As I'm sure most of you know, the IPRT is the leading NGO campaigning for progressive penal reform in the South. We're joined here today by our partners from the North, NIACRO, who also work on similar issues in the North. And I suppose we're here today because we got funding from Community Foundation Ireland and Community Foundation Northern Ireland to do a joint cross-border project. That was really to look at how we could share knowledge, how we could come together, learn from each other's experiences, and this is the second of those knowledge exchange seminars that we're having. 6 months ago we met up in Stormont and we had a session on women who have experienced prison, whose children have been taken into care. And I'm delighted to see some of our friends who spoke at that and give really powerful testimonies about the impact of prison, going into prison, and the impact on them and their children are here today. And you know, I suppose one of the things we wanted to make sure was core to today's session as well was having that lived experience, the voice of people who've been through it, so it doesn't just turn into an academic exercise. We really do want to hear about what it really means for people who have a conviction history and what that means and the barriers that they have faced in their lives. So I suppose I really want to just, there's a really wide variety of people who signed up for today's seminar, so we're delighted to see it. We have representatives here from the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission, from the Northern Irish Human Rights Commission. We have people here from the IPS, from Department of Justice, from Probation, and we have somebody here from Working for Change, Siobhan. So, you know, I think, and then civil society as well. So I think it's great to have us all come together to really kind of discuss what this means in practice and what we can do to make things better. I suppose both IPRT and NIACRO hear from people on a very regular basis. We get calls all the time going, when's the law changing, what's happening with the law, this is really impacting on my life, when can I move on? In my conviction, you know, I paid the price, I just want to get on with things. And they talk to us about the circumstances that might have led them to offending in the first place, whether it's very often it's poverty, it's mental health issues, it's addiction, or sometimes it's just that they made a mistake when they were younger, but how long do they have to pay for it? We're going to hear from people today who talk a little bit more about that. But I suppose the law did change back in 2016 here in the South. I'll let Fiona talk about the North. And you know, it did mean that for the first time you could spend a conviction, as it were, but it's only, you know, 12 months for a custodial sentence and 24 months for a non-custodial sentence, and IPRT at the time would have said that that doesn't go far enough. You know, it only applies to, you know, certain convictions, one conviction, you know, so if you've built up a kind of a record that follows you for a very long time. We've heard from people talking about it following them for decades, and that's just not right. So I suppose in a few minutes we'll hear from Senator Lynn Ruane, who has introduced a bill back in 2018 and still waiting for progress on it, but she's going to talk to us a little bit about what that would mean. And it would extend the periods. It's called a rehabilitative, and that's a really hard word to say, and I really wish I'd, you know, thought of the name. But it's, you know, it will extend, or it will shorten the period that, you know, a conviction can become spent. It will look at multiple convictions. We would say it still doesn't go far enough. And we would urge legislators to take the most progressive and inclusive response and approach that they could, because it would mean a lot to, like, we don't know how many people this impacts in Ireland, but if we were to look at the UK and kind of look at the numbers that they have, like, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people here potentially. So it would really make a real difference to all of those. So we'll hear from Lynn in a moment. She's going to give us a keynote address. And then we'll move into our first panel of the day, which is really talking about lived experience. And you know, there's an employer on that panel as well. I'll let Lynn introduce them. But I think it's going to be a really interactive session. We would welcome questions from the audience. Just to say, this is being recorded, so if there is anybody in the audience who isn't comfortable being recorded, that's absolutely fine. Just let us know afterwards as well, because we can edit, but I just want to flag that with you. This afternoon then, after lunch, which is provided by a social enterprise, a cross-border social enterprise, just to go with today's theme, called Love Catering, who employ people who have challenges and barriers to finding employment for various reasons. After that, we will have our second panel, which will look at that cross-border dimension, and it will look at what we can learn from each other, what's working well in each jurisdiction, what's not working so well. Let's learn from each other's mistakes, and then see where we go forward from there. So I just want to say, I'm delighted to have you all here today, and I will now hand over to my counterpart Fiona Greene, who's Chief Executive of NIACRO. She's worked in the community and voluntary sector in the North for almost 30 years. And is former Director of Care for Northern Ireland Chest, Heart and Stroke, and previously she led the policy and strategy work for Victim Support NI. So thank you so much. And I would just ask if anybody is making contributions to speak into the microphone. We will have a roving mic just so it's picked up in the recording, because there are a lot of people who would love to have been here today and couldn't make it, but will want this recording afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Saoirse, for that introduction, and it is lovely to be here. Just for those who don't know who we are, NIACRO is a voluntary organisation, and we've been working for 51 years in Northern Ireland, taking a lead role in reducing crime and its impact on people and communities. Our vision is of a society in which the needs and rights of all citizens, including victims of crime, adults and children who have been through the criminal justice system, and also those who are at risk of coming into contact with it, are equally respected. So that vision is very true for both ourselves and the IPRT. Specifically, NIACRO's contributions to our society in Northern Ireland are to support the resettlement of adults leaving prison and those on community supervision. So we work very closely with our colleagues in the prison service and in probation in Northern Ireland. We also build skills with our people who use our services, confidence and employability of people, both in prison and in the community. We support children, young people, families and adults who are displaying behaviour that would put them at risk of engaging with the system to make positive changes and choices. We seek to influence service providers across all sectors and build their capacity to provide appropriate support to those affected by the criminal justice system. We also work to impact policy and practice by communicating our policy asks and engaging at every level. At the heart of NIACRO's work is the aim to reduce offending or reoffending, in the belief that integrated approaches towards assistance are most effective. Last year, we worked with 5,403 people, delivering 27 service programmes across Northern Ireland. It is a great honour for the NIACRO team to be here today, and we're delighted to have a day out of the office and come to Dublin on the train today. And it is, as Saoirse said, the second leg of our collaboration project with the IPRT. And again, to reiterate, Saoirse, thanks to the Community Foundation Ireland's All Island Fund, because together we've had a unique and special opportunity to explore mutual areas of interest, to share learning and to improve policy and practice in both jurisdictions. It has been a challenging yet rewarding period of time. We have made some friends and lost some colleagues over the past year or so, but together we have retained our core purpose of bringing knowledge and expertise to the tables we have gathered around, first in Belfast and now here in Dublin. It has been a pleasure to work with Saoirse and her teams, and I believe that we have many years of work to do together. I'm really happy in particular to see our disclosure team here today, so introduce yourself guys in the break, as well as Johnny Cordeau, who is going to be on the panel later, and who led out on our offence conviction disclosure services for NIACRO over the past several years. The impact of living with a criminal conviction and the need to reform legislation and alleviate the ongoing negative consequences goes right to the heart of why NIACRO was established some 51 years ago. Throughout our working communities in Northern Ireland, we witness firsthand every day the impact that having a conviction that can never be spent is having on people's lives, dreams and aspirations. We are contacted on a daily basis by people working their way through this reality as they try to move on with their lives, sometimes after decades. We will hear more about the impact on lives at this event, including an audio from a young woman who's used NIACRO's disclosure services. Mary came to us at her lowest point, and her emotional telling of her experience demonstrates to us all not just the devastation and the anguish and despair, but the need for quality services to support people to overcome the barriers that exist. As well as supporting people with lived experience of criminal justice, since NIACRO has been in existence, our founders, members and staff have campaigned relentlessly for changes to the rehabilitation offenders legislation, which was enacted in Northern Ireland in 1978. Northern Ireland has failed to keep pace with incremental amendments in England and Wales, and our law is simply not fit for purpose. During the seminar today, we will also hear about work going on across the island to bring about legislative change for spent conviction arrangements, as well as challenges that are being made from a human rights point of view. I take this opportunity to say that Les Allenby, our chair, former Chief Commissioner for the Human Rights Commission in Northern Ireland, has written a piece about the proposed new Northern Ireland legislation in our latest edition of NIACRO News, which is outside, so please do pick up a copy. And it also happens to feature two very well coordinated representatives from NIACRO and IPRT on the front cover. We're thankful to Saoirse and her team for coordinating this leg of our project, and we are really looking forward to hearing from our speakers today. So on that note, it is a great pleasure for me to introduce Senator Lynn Ruane, who will deliver our keynote speech. Lynn is an independent senator for Trinity College, serving in the Seanad since 2016. Before entering politics, she developed community drug services and community initiatives over 15 years in Tallaght and Dublin's Canal communities. Having studied the topic of addiction in several courses, Senator Ruane returned to full-time education as a mature student and graduated from Trinity College Dublin in 2016 with an honours degree in political science, philosophy, economics and sociology. Throughout her time in the Seanad, she has championed many social issues in the areas of education, equality and addiction. She has been further instrumental in progressing a more expansive and proportionate spent conviction regime, the criminal justice rehabilitative, again, difficult to say bill, so as to assist people with conviction histories in returning to education and employment. So great to have you here, and
thank you. I think just to start to say why the bill is called what it is, which is, like, first of all, like, I could have many philosophical arguments about the idea that people need to be rehabilitated in the first place, but rehabilitative periods, sometimes, I know that language matters politically, and when deciding what to call the bill, sometimes using a positive framing on even how we speak about legislation to represent the positive nature of the intentions of the legislation is very, very important. So people can buy into an idea of this is about, opportunity, it's about people being able to continue on the continuum of that journey of rehabilitative measures that they're taking in terms of, I suppose, moving out of offending or going into work, or going into college and all those things. So, but with the current climate at the minute in the last, I'd say 4 months, I think that the name of that bill has actually become even more important, because what we see over the last 4 or 5 months is this kind of explosion of Ireland talking about crime and, O'Connell Street and Cherry Orchard, and something that many of us are actually not new to. Like, just because you show up in a community with a camera doesn't all of a sudden make it this new phenomenon that's happening that everybody needs to react to. I mean, many of us know these issues intimately, and they come in ebbs and flows, and communities look after themselves most of the time, and with little resources. And what happens is politicians feel the mood of a nation and start going hard on crime, and it's kind of like, then you come in and say, well, when is the spent convictions, if I had called it that legislation coming along, oh, spent convictions, oh no, we can't be seen to be soft on crime. And that's what you contend with sometimes in even the naming of a piece of legislation, hence why the name of the legislation is what it is. Same with my bill on, which is effectively drug decriminalisation, is called harm reduction measures something. Do you know what I mean? So there's a method as to why I give them these titles. A lot of thought goes into it, and so at the minute where my legislation is, and
I'll give a little bit about, I suppose, the journey that it's at the minute, and a little bit about the content as to what it does. So it's past 5 stages of the Seanad, which is unique for an independent senator to get a piece of legislation through all stages of the Seanad untouched. The problem is now it's in a lottery within the Dáil. Now it's been there for 12 months, and there was one administrative error that meant that because its sponsor also had a bill previously in that lottery, the time frame in which we thought it was in there changed, because you can only have one piece of legislation in the lottery at a given time. Which meant that actually the 12 months that I've been waiting for it to come up, we were actually not actually in the lottery in the way that we thought we were. So the bill is in the lottery now, and given that it has been there and it wasn't meant to be there, I do imagine the bill is going to come up in the next 4 to 6 months. I can't see it because I'm looking at how many bills are currently in the lottery, and I'm trying to apply some mathematics to that and purport and go, yeah, like ratio wise, you know, so many weeks, how many pulled a week, and I'm coming up with the idea that it's potentially 4 to 6 months. I did study economics, but I'm not very good at it because of the maths element, so I don't know if I should go on my instincts on that. But it is there. But what's good about it being there is that it's no longer, you know, it's no longer a piece of legislation coming onto the floor from like a left-wing senator who, you know, has all these ideas about life. It's now being championed by Jennifer McNeil and Ivana Bacik, which means then that it begins to have a new life of that cross-party intent of the bill, so that people can buy into its intentions. And I think with Jennifer and Ivana, they understand these issues, and they also understand youth justice, and they understand justice, and then they also, I think, can be strong advocates to bring everybody along them within the Dáil, because I have no more say now. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm still showing up in people's offices about the bill that I've no control over anymore. So I'm still trying to assert, you know, my involvement, and nobody is rejecting my involvement, thankfully. But I do hope that that comes along. Within that bill, there would be, we would remove the cap on the number of convictions spent. Now, I know there's parts of the bill we'd like to go further, but if we can hold on to that, that is huge. If we can just hold some of them intention points in that of removing the cap on convictions. Because for me, it's about the fact that you're not offending, not how many times you offended. You know, so it's trying to use the language again to go, well, what are we saying here? It's about people not committing crimes. It's not about how many crimes they committed in the past. And that's what the intention of removing the cap is about. And the thing is, if you're continuing to commit crimes, it doesn't matter that the cap is removed, because you would never come out of the loop of having a conviction there. Do you know what I mean? So it's about getting people to understand that you don't, if you're still committing a crime, it's going to come up. It's going to come up when they check your records, because you won't go 6 or 12 months without committing a crime. So it's not going to all of a sudden have this influx of people that nobody knows if, you know, they should be vetted for a particular job or not for a particular job. So that's one of the important things about it. Another important thing about it is something else that I care deeply about, which is looking at socio-economic grounds for discrimination. And for me, convictions are often, not always, because we get contacted by many types of people from different professions and backgrounds who are impacted by convictions, but if you look at the concentration of them, and so it creates a piece in the bill that makes it a grounds of discrimination. So if you are refused a job based on a conviction that has already been spent, well, then you have a case to take. And why that's extremely important is because we yet don't have like socio-economic grounds and stuff in terms of the grounds of discrimination, and there's like, you know, in the hate crime legislation you don't have socio-economic grounds, so there's all these places that don't have that protection. So it's written into this bill that if you are refused employment or a place in college or whatever it is, that you do have grounds to actually take a case of discrimination. And that's because Google, like people, like, I mean, unfortunately, I work quite closely with a number of people who are currently still in prison. We have a man that's currently still in prison who works for my office as part of his kind of just progression. He video links into our office every week. We develop policy. And he's really great at supporting other people in the prison system who are also looking to go on, who are in open centres and looking to go on to university. A few weeks ago, and I'm not going to name and shame the university just yet, but they refused him a place, this lad, not the one that's working for us, the one that is being supported, they refused him a place on the course. and they didn't even try and hide the fact as to why. Because when it was disputed with the support of this individual that works for us, they wrote back, and in the email thread, they actually put the links to the newspaper articles where he was mentioned before he went to prison like 16, 17 years ago. Didn't even hide it. They just said bang, 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 and sent it back, and the university actually sent it back. So we're trying to deal with that in the background to challenge that. But that stuff must be happening all the time, and it just doesn't come on the radar. But now, because I'm working directly with someone within the prison system, they're able to bring that stuff to light, and that's what's important about the lived experience. Is there's so many stuff we don't know about because we don't actually get access to that information, and that's why it's important that we continue to work with people when they come out of the prison system, but also as much as we can while they're in the prison system as well. Another good part of the legislation that I think we have to make sure kind of maintains when it does go through the Dáil is I kind of go into the vetting through the bill and remove drugs possession from in the Garda vetting legislation, because it's lumped in there with murder and all the other kind of what people would see as the further end of crime, and then they have drugs possession. So you could be in there for €20 worth of cannabis in 1980, and that's still coming up on your record in terms of travelling, in terms of everything. So it goes in and it takes that out of that category. So it kind of recategorises drugs possession in and of a sense. Now, there's so much more I'd like to do with the bill, but it's definitely a million miles away from the starting point that we're at. There's stuff I'd love to do with the Children's Act as well in relation to, like, all my charges thankfully were before I was 18. So my record got squashed well before they became a problem for me. I was in and out of children's courts, all of that. But there is people who have committed crimes in terms of who have actually taken a life when they were 12, 13 or 14. And we haven't really began to talk about that yet in Ireland. I don't know anywhere, but we haven't begun to talk about that as the fact that will never come off that person's record, that child's record. And they may never, and in many cases, never, ever, ever, ever commit a single other offence for the rest of their lives. And we did look at it as part of our suspend convictions legislation, but it's not actually that legislation that work belongs in. It's actually in the Children's Act, and I think they're conversations that we potentially need to talk about as well in terms of young people that have committed crimes that many people will be uncomfortable actually talking about, but we have to actually talk about them. And then finally, what I finish on, I was talking to a man in Australia, and he's originally from Swords, and he's running social enterprises over there, and the lads, I might actually introduce the lads to him at some stage. But what they've done in their legislation over there, and I know Siobhan will be keen on this as well, is they've actually created in their legislation that 13% of all procurement tenders automatically go to that social enterprise. And this social enterprise does everything from the traffic light maintenance to the zebra crossings, road maintenance. They're all trained in like construction elements and all different types of fields, and that 13% of all of their procurements go straight into this social enterprise. And I thought that was a really positive way in trying to make the state also responsible for ensuring pathways for people to be able to actually engage in employment. But yeah, so there's not much more to add to it other than at this point with the legislation, we just need to keep encouraging the conversation, and also being really clear that looking at the past convictions of people is not the same in any sense of the word as somehow saying that crime is okay. And the reason why I say that is that I'm in there listening to conversations and how people are being spoke about at the minute because of news reports and newspapers and this and that, and they don't really unpack the two issues in the way that they should. So I think we should be very clear on going, like, these are separate issues, that actually having a really progressive spent conviction regime is actually reducing crime more than your actual perceived idea of policing. So police on the street, everyone will be safe, which that's never actually been the case. But then you have the other pieces of legislation that are going, we want to reduce recidivism, reduce crime, and get people into professions, into college, into all of those, and that thing actually does reduce crime. But that's too sometimes long-term thinking for short-term politics, unfortunately. And I think it's on us to make sure that they understand the differences between those things. And one more note, and I think that's why I done, some of you would have listened to the podcast Conversations on the Margins. And the reason I done that podcast the way that I did, I ensured that none of the lads' crimes were spoke about, and that I didn't give their names, because I wanted the public to be forced to listen to real people talk about their lives, talk about their histories, talk about their hopes, their ambitions, hear their intellect, hear their passions, and not be able to know what that person did. And that's a struggle for people. So people will be coming up to me, you know, so and so on episode number 4, you know, what did that person do? I'm not telling you. So it was a bit of an exercise back on the public to not literally, because people would have judged them straight away. So all the nice things that were being said about them lads, how amazing they were, how they should be out doing this work, how they should be talking on this panel, how they should be getting their degree in this and that, that would have changed the second that any person decided to want to know what they did by having to Google them or having their name. All of a sudden it would have been different. That's why we need to protect people's histories and past and get rid of their convictions and allow people to actually move on with their lives. Thank you. Great, thank you. So on the panel today we have Damien, we've Karen, and we've Paul. And what I might do is I might just, what is it? And the video. Sorry.
No,
yeah.
no.
So in person we have here today, and then we also will have a video from Mary, who was spoken about there a few minutes ago. And I don't think we're playing that first, though, are we?
Well, which do you prefer? Do you want to get it?
Then
you can, it won't
yeah.
disrupt the conversation.
Okay, let's go with that. So.
Sorry.
No, you're grand. It's an odd feeling to go from giving the keynote address to sitting down and feeling the urge to thank yourself for giving the keynote address. Thanks, Lynn, for giving that keynote address. Sorry. There probably should have been one other person in between the process. Grand. So now we're going to hear the story of Mary, which is not her real name, and in 1994, then an 18-year-old living in Belfast, she and 3 friends took it in turns at the weekend to buy their drugs, 4 acid tablets, 1 each to go clubbing. It was her week to buy when they were caught by the police, and it has changed the rest of her life. Charged with her first offence supplying a Class A drug, she was given 6 months sentence, suspended for 2 years, barred from following her family into the RAF, and with the death of her father in the immediate aftermath of the case, her conviction and feelings of shame saw her lifestyle spiral into chaos. Years later, she set up her own business. It was when local authorities in Northern Ireland changed how they sought disclosure from self-employed contractors that she was told they wanted an enhanced access check. Mary called NIACRO in a distressed state, afraid she was about to lose everything she had built up. Now almost 50, we pick up her story as she retells how she made contact with us that day.
That's when I realised that I was going to have to disclose this again, and it obviously brought back every single nightmare and terror that I had ever been through for the last 30 years of my life. Yeah, there's a very, very good possibility the business that you have built up for the last 6 years, you'll not be able to do anymore. And I sort of went to pieces, as you can only imagine. I really don't know how I filmed NIACRO, and I remember specifically filming them and literally completely being in pieces on the phone. I genuinely think if Johnny hadn't phoned me back and helped me through that day, I would have been more than happy to have killed myself. And I know that sounds really dramatic, but I had just had enough. I just couldn't understand how something that you did when you were 18 could make such a hash of my life still 30 years on. I just couldn't understand what I had done so bad that this deserved to ruin all of my life. if it hadn't been for NIACRO, I genuinely don't know where I would be today. I certainly wouldn't have a job. I'd probably be on the dole. I probably would have lost my home, and I'd probably either be on the streets or back using drugs again. It's easy to think when you're 18 years of age that you're above the law, or it's something that you don't worry about, because when you're 18 you never worry about your future. You never worry about what you're going to do when you're in your 30s or your 40s. But believe me, it's something that most people should be thinking about, because if you get yourself a criminal record, you're snookered. That's as simple as that. Beforehand, for 30 years, I was constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting on being called out, waiting for somebody to find out that I had a record, waiting to find out whether I was going to lose a job. And I think, in all honesty, that drugs are the worst one that you can have. It doesn't matter if you get caught smoking a spliff. It doesn't matter if you get caught, on a class C, B, or A drug. It really doesn't matter. Let me tell you, you have a record, and it doesn't say what you have the record for. People don't care. In everybody's eyes, you are just a drug addict, regardless, and you'll just have an eternity of not being able to get a job. I very naively, whenever all four of us got done at the time, obviously, when we got done in the High Court, and you can imagine you're standing in front of like 100 crumblies, as we would have called them back then, and genuinely thought, when I was sort of like, well, you've got 6 months, and we're going to fine you for 2 years. I thought, oh great, well, we'll just not get into trouble for 2 years. It'll be on our record for 5 years, and then we'll just skippy-dippity-doo on with our lives. It's just not what it is at all. You're punished. You are punished for the rest of your lives. There is no end game. There is no, in 5 years, this will be off my record. There is no, in 10 years, it will be off my record. It's always on your record for the rest of your life. It is as simple as that. People have labelled you before they even know you. They just see your name on a piece of paper. They see your charges. And in all honesty, if there's another candidate sitting beside you and they don't have charges, that other candidate's going to get the job. You'll not even get an interview. It's as simple as that. It's very easy for me to sit here and say, just don't do it. Well, I think we all find ourselves in situations where there's either peer pressure, or you find yourself, trying to impress somebody, or maybe you're just in a terrible position in your life, and that's what headed me down that road. Unfortunately, we go down paths sometimes, whether it's just the once or whether we do it all the time, and we make mistakes, and people make mistakes. When you're 18, you just don't think. When you're younger than that, you don't think. You think you've got the rest of the world and the rest of your life in front of you. So I can't sit here and judge other people for making mistakes, but what I would say to you is, if you have done something, or you're planning on doing something, or you ever do something and you find yourself in trouble, for God's sake, get legal representation and phone NIACRO, because NIACRO, in all honesty, is probably the only reason why I'm still alive right now.
I think that the testimony itself speaks for itself, and it also speaks of the fact, Mary was 18 and she's 50 now, and just the impact of this other type of deprivation of liberty beyond the original punishment that you've been given, this lifelong deprivation of liberty and looking over your shoulder. I'd like obviously to pass on our thanks for Mary for sharing her story and experience, and I know that the last contact that was had with Mary, her business is successful and she's engaged to be married, and her own words, life is good. And I think that's what we want for everyone, is to be able to go, life is good. And I always find it extraordinary that, especially when it comes to drugs possession, that in many cases, a lot of cases, and I'd love to have more statistics on that, and hopefully we will soon, is that often the people refusing you the job or carrying out the betting or doing the interview have all done the exact same thing you have. The amount of drug use in the country, it's not isolated to a particular profession or class, whether it's weed, cocaine, or other types of drugs that are predominantly in working class areas like heroin or crack, and you're being refused and being judged by an industry that's actually engaging in the same behaviour, which is really, I think, hard to digest. I'll leave it there in relation to Mary, and I think I will go to Damien first, because you're right beside me, I suppose, and I'll continue in that order. So Damien is a community education and disability officer with Galway Rural Development and founder of, is it Spirit Nua? Yeah, good. I usually ask my Irish speaking daughter to check my notes in the morning if I've any Irish language, but I didn't this morning. So Spirit Nua, which translates to New Horizon.
New Horizon.
So Damien, could you maybe first tell us a little bit about Spirit Nua and I suppose the reasons why you set it up?
Yeah, so first of all, fair play to that lady there for sharing her story. I totally relate to that. Spirit Nua is Irish for New Horizon, and what it gives is the idea of new beginnings and the chance to start over. So it was a personal journey through the criminal justice system. I used all of my time in a very, very constructive way and had big, beautiful plans for the future, but when I got out then, that's when the punishment began. When I applied for a house, applied for a job, applied to volunteer, applied for insurance, even looking at leaving the country. Every time I applied myself in a constructive way, we were told no. So what we're doing today is we're using, we're halfway through a feasibility study which was funded by Kickstart under the government account funds, and we're developing a new model of disclosure, a strengths-based model of disclosure that gives a snapshot of where the individual is at today rather than where the individual was at historically. Currently in Ireland, employers only get one view, which is purely negative, so we're validating all of the good stuff that people have done, and we're looking to provide employers with that to make fairer and a more balanced and informed decision on giving somebody a chance. So in a nutshell, that's what we're doing.
Thank you, Damien. I think you said something also, yeah, thanks for telling me my mic was off. Thanks. I think something I just picked up on that you said there was when the punishment begins. I mean, isn't it hard to kind of think about the idea that the punishment is happening in terms of you've been given a sentence, but then when you go out, you actually remember the out bit as the punishment. That's really saying something. I'm just wondering, can maybe you talk to that a little bit more in terms of what type of experience you had, because it's a funny comparison to make, but I always think of kids in primary school and teachers filling them full of aspirations and joy and thoughts of being doctors and vets, and then you go to secondary school and that does the opposite and tells you, no, you're going to achieve nothing, don't go and go into woodwork there, there's no point, you're not going to be a doctor, that kind of thing. And it feels a little bit like that, like there's this emphasis when you're in the prison system to kind of go, do all the courses, do all the certificates, do the education piece because it's going to change your life. And then you leave and you're going, oh, that's not true. So can you talk a little bit about the impact of that?
Yeah, well, interestingly, like one of the studies that came up in my part of my research was 82% of people with convictions believe that their past is going to prevent them from securing opportunity. So if they already believe that and they see guard vetting applies, do you have any convictions spent or unspent? They're not going to put their names out there like, I call them degradation ceremonies, You're out there trying to secure an opportunity and you have to tell somebody that you don't know something really, really bad about your past that you're doing everything you can to move on from. It's really counterproductive, but in prison there's loads of opportunities to reflect, get educated, get job training, deal with your issues and plan for a better future. And that's what I did, but I was very naive. I didn't believe that statistic that I genuinely believed I was going to hit the ground running and make a good life for myself, rebuild my family structures, make amends to the community, give back, all that type of stuff, but I just couldn't do that. And what happened then was I found myself right back to where I started again, because I gave up. I was spending all my money, my dough, looking for work. I was walking the shoes off my feet, knocking on doors, being told no every day for months and months, and I'd get home, I'd open the fridge and all that'd be in it is a light, bills on the floor, that type of thing. So my hand was forced. I had to go back doing something that was easy, and doing something that found me in prison to begin with in the first place. Who won there? Nobody, I certainly didn't anyways.
And I think the idea, even the way we say something that's easy, because in the end it's not. Actually, it is the harder decision, it is the harder decision to go back to something that you've wanted to move away from. So would you agree in saying it's not about easy, it's about accessible? You've done the thing that was actually accessible, which was criminality.
Well, when I was doing what I was doing, I said, how the hell did I find myself back here after doing all them right things in prison, after getting onto enhanced regimes, you know, out to open prisons and things like that, because they recognised the change in behaviour in me. But when I got out the gate, then I got out of the same footing as somebody that fought their whole way through their sentence, you know. We all got out at day one. This is when your desistance journey has begun. I spent 3 years planning for that day, you know, and it amounted to nothing. So that's why we've set up what we've set up, and what we're doing is we're validating people's commitment to change, and we're supporting them around the disclosure piece, you know, a positive disclosure. Yes, this stuff did happen. Yes, we held our hands up and we paid for it. We paid dearly for it. But now we're doing everything right, and that needs to be validated and supported.
So you spoke about knocking on doors and obviously looking for employment and stuff, and then you spoke about, you know, people will rule themselves out of a position as soon as they see that question, you know, do you have a conviction? And some people even asking spent or unspent. I actually get calls to my office going, do I have to declare? I'm like, no, don't. You know, and they shouldn't even have to be in that position where they're thinking about, like, imagine someone asking, do you have a conviction that's spent? The reason it's spent in the first place is I don't have to tell you that, you know. But what do you think it's important for employers to remove that as a barrier, so that if they don't ask about convictions on the, you know, on the application or, you know, anything like that, but that actually they have to be able to meet you first and get a feeling for who you are, what your skills are, which would make it more difficult, I think, when you have to meet someone face to face, rather than just filtering out who they think is not worthy of the job by asking about a conviction on an application form. How important it is, do you think, to make sure that that's gone?
I'll give you an example of one interview I went through, and it was on a factory floor. Basically, I passed the initial interview, the aptitude test. I was called back for that. I was called back again for a health and fitness test. Passed all of them things, and then the last thing they asked me, any criminal convictions? And I said, yes, I have. They're from 10 years ago or more at the time. This is what they were, and that was what the conversation was focused on. I was trying to bring it, well, that was then, this is now, but obviously I didn't get the job. And the job advertisement actually said full training will be provided, so I didn't really need to know anything about the job or how to do it. They were going to train me, but because I had convictions, I didn't hear from them again. Now at that time I was in a management role, I was after getting an honours degree, all these types of things, and it didn't matter. I had convictions. They weren't willing to take a chance.
And I think it's this automatic exclusion of people, isn't it? It's not even, like, employers don't even have to do that. I mean, you have discretion. I mean, you have discretion to be able to use your, you know, insights and cop on and go, well, what is this conviction actually relative to the task at hand and the job that the person is doing? And if it's not, just having some smarts about that and going, well, it doesn't actually matter that you have a conviction. Just one last question, Damien, before I move on, in relation to how we can make change in this area. What do you think, is the, obviously there's lots of changes, but if there was one that stands out to you as something that we really need to address to be able to improve the situation, what would that be?
Well, there's a new process in the prison system with the integrated sentence management program, where you get informed about what you can do with your time, you know, and you can make a plan with your ISM officer on how you're going to spend your time. You know, let's go through that process then and check in when you're finished. Did you stick to that? Did you stick to that plan? And did you get onto enhanced regimes? And then that follows you out the gate with a value, you know, rather than day one you're fresh out of prison. I think that would help. But most certainly for people like me and people that I work with today, this idea of being able to move on with your life in a fully participating way without any labels, that would help everybody an awful lot more. Labels have been holding back people for generations, you know, it's not a new phenomenon. Things are changing, lots of great work is happening, your work is absolutely amazing too. But this labels, they just follow you around like a bad smell. And you can't move on because of that. That needs to change.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Damien. We'll have a short amount of time at the end for questions and answers, but I might hear from each speaker first before we do that. I'm not a very good chair, so nobody would have lunch if I didn't leave questions and answers till the end. So in relation then, Karen is next there, and Karen, your website describes Farron's as a company that welcomes everybody, which obviously it's a brilliant statement to make, and I'm just wondering, can you tell us a little bit more about that, and does it have real effect, you know, because I think sometimes, and some employers are very engaged, but other employers will have, like, you know, ideas about equality and, you know, creating employment for working class communities and all of this, but sometimes then when you dig down into it, there's still a filtering process that happens. So can you tell me on behalf of Farron's, what does it mean to welcome everybody?
Yeah, so I'll give a little bit of an overview of who we are. So we're a building and civil engineering company based in Belfast, but we operate the whole way across the UK and Ireland. And we have upwards of 600 employees at the minute, directly employed through Farron's, and then our supply chain partners as well. So we kind of, on a project, would make up 20% of the workforce, and then our supply chain make up the other 80%. So a big part of what we do and what sits within the heart of our organisation is the looking at what we can do for local communities, so making sure that we leave them in a better place. And part of that is kind of twofold, as in we would have social value commitments on some of our projects. So if we're building something that's a public procured project, then there will, through the UK Social Value Act, or most recently within Northern Ireland through the Public Procurement Act, we'll have some those obligations around what we do with those local communities and how we tackle some of the challenges that are out there. We also do it because it's something that's ingrained within our business, and we want to do it, and we've done it well before the introduction of the Social Value Act. And it's about, I suppose, giving opportunities to people that face barriers to employment. I suppose bringing it into what we're talking around today, we've done a lot of work around trying to tackle skills shortages and meet those social obligations through looking at what we do with people that are maybe facing barriers around their convictions. So we've worked with NIACRO for a while now, and we work with business in the community. And what we've done recently over the last couple of years is introduced Ban the Box through our application process. And through Ban the Box, what we've done is worked with just, I suppose, educating our line managers and through our recruitment process around how you interview people based on their skills and competencies, and then you have an opportunity later on in the process then to address those. So whether that's it, and every application and job is different based on the project that they're going to be working on. You know, does it require an Access NI check or a DBS check, or, you know, regard about verification or vetting done in the Republic. So it does vary across the different projects and different roles, but generally we have a rule that we don't have a tick box on our application anymore. That has now been removed. So we've done a lot of work with Saoirse here today and through Ban the Box, and we are a sponsor employer, just trying to educate that out within Northern Ireland as well around the benefits that has brought to us as a business. And it's just opened doors, and, you know, it's bringing in a skill set that maybe didn't think that they had an opportunity before. So
yeah, brilliant. And then, so can you explain to me then? So in terms of obviously Ban the Box and people applying for the job, and then obviously assessing each situation as it comes in terms of the project that people are working on. But do you do any in-reach then in terms of the prison system themselves, in terms of that skills shortage or anything? Is there work that happens in the prison that then extends when people are leaving, or is it just based on if you happen to apply and you happen to have a record, well then this is how we deal with it? Or do you actually seek out people who are leaving the prison system?
yeah, so we would be heavily involved in some of the programmes that are going on within the prison. So we would work with Belfast Metropolitan College around their education and getting people, I suppose, employment ready. So it's maybe not just people that are coming into the construction industry, but how we can support people with their CVs when they're approaching those questions at interview stage. So it's really important that, you know, we support that from that stage. So we would go in and do the employability events within the prisons as well. And then we've run a couple of schemes where it's been kind of work experience on site for people that are currently serving, and people that are just kind of released released out in and looking for employment. So yes, it's kind of a journey that we're developing and supporting with the partnerships that we have within Northern Ireland.
Brilliant. And then, so if you were to sit down in a room with other employers, like, what would you tell them are the benefits of that? Like, what are the positives beyond beyond equality, like improving lives for everyone, but like in terms of diversifying the actual workforce and having people that really actually want to engage in work? Like, what would you say to employers to help them come on that journey so that they have that mindset too?
Yeah, I mean, it's and you would face challenges when we've approached this before and kind of introduced it. You get the challenges back around clients are going to object to this, or investors, that are maybe involved in the project are going to object to this. And it's like, no, whenever you've looked at it and you've shown the statistics, it's actually the opposite. They want to see how you're going to support local economies by, if we can help one person from not going back into the justice system or reoffending, the benefits that brings to the local economy. And a lot of the local authorities that we would work with would support this. And if I think of the activity that's going on around social value and measuring that, and the UK through the Social Value Act, and they carry the heaviest social return on investment figure for people that have been in the justice system that we have given employment opportunities to. So it's starting to grow momentum and we're starting to see it. And you mentioned about the group in Australia and through the social enterprise. And I have seen things, from I've been kind of in this field, it's growing so rapidly, and we're starting to see public procurement now asking us to introduce social enterprises into our supply chain. So that's now becoming a percentage. We're starting to see that, which is fantastic. And that's only moved on in the last probably year, 18 months, where we're starting to see that in our tenders coming through as well.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you, Karen. Thanks a million. So, welcome, Paul. We decided, because we were both from California, we'd colour coordinate this morning.
Wasn't planned. Must be a Tala thing.
I don't know if Tala was a colour, it'd be orange. I'm not sure. Maybe red. So, welcome, Paul. It's lovely to have you here today. So, you've set up a social enterprise as well, which is called New Creation Cleaning Services. That specifically aims to create opportunities for people who've been excluded from the workforce. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, and maybe what your motivations were in the first place for setting it up?
Yeah, so thanks for having me here today. So the social enterprise itself, New Creation Cleaning Services, is a cleaning service business to commercial and residential properties, like any other business. But the goal of the enterprise is to give opportunity to people who would have, like, probably not any experience in employment, people who would be coming out of addiction and needing that support going back into the community. So the motives for the social enterprise would be because of my own personal experience, having spent like nearly 10 years in prison because of addiction related issues. So I'm coming out of prison, the last time in 2014, I had just addressed addiction issues, and trying to find employment then was the major challenge. So I went in, done all the work in addiction recovery, started to come back into the family and rebuild relationships, and then the next stage for me was employment. I needed to provide and be productive in my family and my community. So when I started to go for interviews and put myself out there, I was finding a massive barrier in getting employment because of my conviction. So in every interview I had to tick the box or disclose that I had convictions, and that then resulted in probably not getting anything back from the interview. So in doing that for a couple of months, I understood I probably won't get a job in the normal process. So I decided then to look at setting up a sole trade just to employ myself. So I said, I need to employ myself, I need to just get working, That was the mindset. And in that time, I started to link in with another charity who supported people coming out of prison, and that then began the whole concept of a social enterprise. This was then around 2016, and I was in the process of developing a social enterprise alongside the charity. Now, that charity itself gave me a lot of mentorship, it gave me the support and the training I need to develop professionally. So I didn't go down the education route. I was more kind of just visionary, you know, I see it, have a vision, have a passion, I want to see it come to pass, and I actually got the support through other individuals who came alongside me, who mentored me, who supported me to develop professionally what I was lacking. I had the heart and the desire, but I didn't have the maybe training and experience. So I was given that through other means. And then about to launch the other social enterprise, the insurance industry stopped that. So I couldn't get a policy to begin that enterprise. So then COVID hit. And then during that period, I began to develop this cleaning service social enterprise. So the motive is out of my own personal experience in coming out of prison and coming out of addiction. And the second really one is a moral conviction. And what I mean by that is that, you know, in my recovery, I would have a strong Christian faith, and that motivates me in what I do in working with other people. So, you know, for me, the greatest thing I can do is to love my neighbour as myself. And what does that mean? I understand what it's like to be sitting in a prison cell. I understand what it's like to be coming out of addiction. I understand what it's like to be trying to find employment. And if I'm able to create a space for other people who are coming behind me in that area, then the greatest thing I can do is to give my time and ability to other people who need the same support, you know. That I put myself in their position and say, what did I need? Who helped me? How did I get where I am today? And I want to be able to do that as well in the same sense. So it's a cleaning business, it's nothing special, but it gives that space for people to train, to develop. So I had a guy with me yesterday, and I was in an affluent area, and this guy is as rough as they come. And I'm saying to him, he says, oh, can I drop business cards in the door? And I'm saying, yeah, but I'm thinking, don't knock on the doors. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm thinking, if he opens the door and they see him, are they going to just reject the enterprise because of his appearance, you know? But at the end of it, he's saying to me, like, I just want to learn, I want to train. And I'm sitting there looking at him in the van, and I'm saying to myself, like, this guy is the type of people that, you know, I'm wanting to help. And how do you do that in a business? That's probably the next question, but how do you actually bring that to passion, you know what I mean? So that would be motivation. You know?
That's the thing, isn't it? I think it's hard when I can imagine it's hard in your position in that way, is that because the people that you're working with, you know, are going to be judged, and then you're trying not to compound that judgment by getting in the way of them doing the things that they need to do to build the business, because they'll be judged, you know. And it's trying to, it's difficult. So you're like, we accept you how you're dressed, love a bit of rough, all of that, we're grand, you know what I mean? And we don't mind that, that's just us. But we know how that perception is perceived on the other end. So you're trying to build a business and not actually make someone not want to come back and work with you the next day because you told them they have to probably dress differently to knock at the door, or speak differently, or look differently, or not wear a hoodie that day and stuff. And that's the opposite of everything that you want to be doing. You know? I think just in relation to how important do you think it is in terms of the social, because you both have social enterprises, and then you're working in relation to the taking in that social enterprise piece in terms of the tender. I always look at the funding models, sorry I'm going off script lads, but the funding models in terms of, so like obviously community foundations support this today, but often sometimes big philanthropic funding and big funders, they're very hard to access, especially for like local people that aren't involved with structures like partnerships or other big organisations that kind of sometimes gatekeep as to what gets funded. And I'm just wondering, how important is it for philanthropic funders and those that have access to monies to bring that right down into the heart of just a man who's living in an estate who has an idea, you know, instead of going, oh well, we don't know if this will, you know, everyone's a bit risk averse, do you know what I mean? And you're saying that it's a cleaning service, it's not nothing special, but it is, do you know what I mean? It gives you agency and autonomy, and it's work, and it's the same as every other work, and it's creating opportunities for other people to come with you. But I'm wondering what your thoughts are in being able to actually get the support and funding to actually do that type of work, and how difficult is that?
Yeah, so that is a challenge, and if you're going to depend on funding, you probably won't do it, you know. So you have to have a drive and a passion to do the work first off, you know. So you're like depending on the good nature of, like, you know, maybe supporters and funders to start off, and then for me, my model is to work and reinvest, to build it like from grassroots up, you know. So to access the funding, yes, there is great support that's there now with social enterprise, but, and even with people like, you know, as you were saying, like that would fund organisations like that, it's a challenge, and I suppose you need to have everything in place that there's confidence that money will be used in the right way. That's always the thing with funding, isn't it? That the funding is used for the purpose and that you can account and show that will be using that means, you know what I mean? So, you know, I think you have to, in a sense, have everything in order for that to happen. And that again comes down to an issue of the right people working in the right way to give that confidence to funders, so they know, like, so setting up a board, it's a company limited by guarantee, it's registered and oversighted by a board and ensured everything is in the right place. The next stage is then being able to present that to funders and say, this is an enterprise that is worth investing in. This, and even without the investment, it's more a thing of contracts. If I'm able to build contracts and get the income through work, well, that's the nature of a social enterprise. It's changing the economy through social work, you know what I mean? So I'm saying, use a service, we will take on the risk of employing guys, mentoring them, supporting them, enabling them to become productive again after prison, after addiction. We're not asking you to take the risk, you know what I mean? We'll do that end of things. The whole end of things is just like to take on the service. Use the service.
And I suppose it's important as well when you are working with marginalised groups, in terms of, like, you both are in relation to working with people who have offended. It's also for people to understand that the work is at different stages. So people need to be willing to invest in early development that may not have an output in the immediate. It's like early development of those ideas, like how to become a board, how to do those things. Sometimes I think we just want to fund what one looks like it's going to do the most amazing, so that we can point to it and go, well, we funded that. But they don't want to talk to all the other pieces that are in that very early stage of thinking, and I think that's important, and I think user work is a testament to that. Yeah.
Just with the support for social entrepreneurs and all that type of thing, one of the big supports by the government is the Working to Change strategy, and there's 46 recommendations in that to support people around social enterprise development, direct employment and entrepreneurship. And that was a shining light in my journey. You know, I was able to link into that and get benefit from that down along the way. But like Social Entrepreneurs Ireland, they would have funded us with seed funding to develop a website, and Social Impact Ireland would have given us a free incubator program to develop the social enterprise piece, and Rethink Ireland as well. Like, so there's lots of people interested in this whole problem area we're talking about, but I think it's very important that initiatives like Working to Change and the one before it, the New Way Forward, that continues, because it's been a guiding light on my journey.
Thank you.
Can I just add in around, you know, the whole procurement piece? It's so important that it forms part of that, because we can see that, you know, from the social value acts across the different areas that we are operating in, you know, that definitely helps and promotes that whole social enterprise piece, and bringing it in and highlighting it within, you know, the government agencies as well. So it's a massive requirement that's needed around public funded projects.
Yeah, totally, 100%. I think we'll open up to questions and answers. Am I on time? I'm ahead of time. So have we any questions? Is there a mic going around, or? And you take this, okay. Any questions?
Hi, sorry, I'll go first, just so that no one else has to be the first person asking a question. Yeah, I suppose, thanks everyone for, that was really helpful insight into, you know, how to engage and how to actually get employment and stuff. I suppose, like, listening, I suppose, for Lynn's podcast, but also the skills that you're speaking about there. I mean, it sounds like, you know, people who've been through the prison services and engaged with the prison services have studied more and engaged more with education than anyone I know from college, and have worked much harder than anyone, probably than I did as well in college, you know. So in terms of flipping the conversation away from being that you're doing someone who came out of prison a favour, and into the more positive light of saying these people have worked harder than anybody else who's coming for employment. How do we move into that space, and what do we think needs to happen for that message to get across? Because I think that's what I heard today, really.
Yeah, I suppose for us it's doing that work with inmates and making sure that they have the confidence to talk about that when they go for interviews, when that they do that kind of competency and skills-based kind of knowledge sharing, you know, when they're going for interviews, that they can openly talk about that before then they may have to address the conviction part. So if we can support in any way through that, it's the start of the journey.
Yeah, well, I suppose for me, like, you know, I'm in a good space now, you know, like I took 10 years or more to get where I'm at, quite happy where I'm at, but it bothers me to think about all of the people coming back after me that would have gone through the same issues I went through, found themselves back there. Like, I would have had friends inside in prison that I would have relied on, you know, for educational support, training support and all that type of stuff. And I read about them in the paper, they're now dead or they're right back to where they started. I mean, like, who wins? You know, justice doesn't win, you know, not in that situation. They had so much to offer, so much potential, had the big beautiful plans, and they just couldn't realise them, you know. Everybody would have won around them people if they were able to get on and move on, you know. And that's what we need to be supporting people to do.
Thank you. I think I'm reminded of, I have a box at home. I remember writing an article about it before, but and I'm sure the lads are the same as well, but I have a box at home full of brown envelopes from prisons, full of handwritten letters from all my pals, and what always struck me was the aspiration in the letters, and then how aspiration meets reality. And you would love to somehow capture, you're thinking of all the people you've saying have been lost and didn't get to fulfill that journey, you know, to be able to bring together some of those hopes and dreams to show people, like, these were the aspirations of people while they were in the prison system and before. And it's like, you know, that ends when they enter back into the community, and that's like, why is that? Do you know what I mean? And I think it's important. It's an important point to try and capture some of their lives, I think. Yeah, Paul?
No, just to touch on what Damien said as well. It's just, I know, like, personally, two individuals who, after coming out of prison, went on to get masters, and they worked so hard to do that. And one guy, after doing his masters, he ended up working on a building site, and was because he couldn't get employment. You know, it was criminology, sociology, and he went through, I think, 5-6 years of college, and then at the end couldn't get employment. And he worked hard, and he funded a lot of it himself. Another guy, he set up an organisation, and he done well. Do you know what I mean? Like, but he had the support. So I think the support is really important. I know one guy was doing it mainly solo, and it was college. The other person had supports around him. So, you know, to highlight that again is a really important thing, that it's shown that, you know, people who have convictions and who come out really work hard to change. And if that's not highlighted, then you're going in again cold to interviews, even if it's after an academic degree, you might still face the same problems, you know. So it's really important.
Yeah. This man over here.
Yeah. Just sort of two questions. One to Northern Ireland. So I don't know. If Karen or Fiona can answer. Is there any legislation in the process of being planned in Northern Ireland similar to Lynn's legislation in the south? And in relation to the situation in the south, we've been talking about the barriers to employment, but there are also barriers to things like being on boards, certainly on NGOs, possibly, I don't know, maybe somebody could clarify this, on charities or companies. And it seems to me really important, and social enterprises presumably, that if there are barriers there, the legislation that you're planning, Lynn, should maybe address that also.
Just before, it is even volunteering with your local GAA club is becoming an issue. You know, bringing your son or daughter on the summer project is becoming an issue where you're having to disclose things from, you know, your life just to attend something with your child. And then boards is a big issue as well. I know some people have had to go to the courts in Ireland to actually to go on boards. I'm the chair of the Canal Community's Local Drugs and Alcohol Task Force, and we would come up against the same issues in terms of wanting to have directors who have lived experience but have also got charges, and not being able to actually have them as equal members on our drugs task forces either. So it definitely, I think to if you transform the legislation, you would hopefully all the convictions would become spent. Some people still wouldn't be captured in that, even though a lot would, but some wouldn't. So it probably definitely needs to go even further about how we make up our boards, and why we guard vet people to sit at a table. I mean, we should be thanking people that want to sit on boards, not making it more difficult. But yeah, maybe Karen can add something to that.
Yeah, I mean, we would heavily rely on NIACRO for supporting us with, so maybe Fiona, could you respond to that one?
Just to answer the question, just in relation to the Northern Ireland legislation, we will be exploring that later on in the panel, and we will hear from Johnny in particular around the services and the impact that it's having, and what the new legislation is going to look like. Currently, as I said earlier, we have a Rehabilitation of Offenders Order for Northern Ireland, 1978, so it's very old. It's antiquated and it's not fit for purpose. There is a draft legislation ready to be enacted, however, which does see good improvements, and actually is going probably a little bit further than we would have anticipated, even in comparison to some colleagues in England and Wales. So whilst we were pleased to see that, a bit like what you were saying earlier, a technical difficulty stopped it, and as you know, we don't have any legislative activity going on in Northern Ireland, so it is caught up in that. So while yours is caught up in a lottery, ours is caught up in the lottery of the Northern Ireland Executive.
Okay, thank you. Any other? There's a man down the back there, and then this woman here up the front.
Hi, it's Niall Walsh from the Pathways Centre. It's great to see the cross-border all-learning collaboration with NIACRO and IPRT. It is good to see. And I want to thank Paul and Damien for sharing their experiences and their entrepreneurial skills. I'm sure it's going to carry them far. And it is lovely to see. Also, the last thank you with Lynn and your conversations on the margin. I was delighted to hear you say that. I haven't finished yet, I'm on episode 5, but I'm getting through it. But I just want to commend how you did approach that with the lads. There's a danger for myself and for the lads up there. When you have lived experience, organisations want to hear that personal story because it is so powerful to hear the success stories. But there is a danger of becoming poster child for prisoner reintegration when you're asked to do podcasts and media and all, and there's a danger of that. So just to commend how it was really tastefully done. When you're talking about barriers to reintegration, there is things, housing, car insurance, travel, all that type of thing. The travel is for a different jurisdiction, so it's not really one of the main things I would see is the employment. And it's great that IPS, probation, courts, civil service, legal profession are here today. But the entire criminal justice system, I think it's staffed by people who get a fairly, by and large, fairly decent wage. But it's disappointing. I think we lag behind internationally in terms of employing people with spent convictions, any convictions. And I would urge them to practice more what they preach. And I'm not talking about a CE scheme, I'm talking about people who have degrees and masters and 2 masters and could either managerial or certainly positions of influence, and I don't see that. Maybe I don't know if this is a question or a comment. Someone can point it out if it is, but I don't see it. I do see it in some organisations, and that's how to affect change. I think if they're in the organisations. And the last thing I'd say, the contracts procurement. I'd love to see something like that here in Ireland, and I don't know if there's anything, if even in the pipelines, or if anyone's even having that discussion. But if you look at some of the contracts across the criminal justice, and they're substantial, and it would be delightful to see. I know Siobhan is sitting a couple of seats up in front. She probably has a plan somewhere, but yeah, I thought so. Thanks.
Sure, but maybe before we go to that woman, we'll let Siobhan tell us the plan.
Here's one I made earlier. Damien, thanks for a shout out to the work of the change. I swear that wasn't planned. And a brilliant panel discussion. I have the privilege of knowing Damien and Paul for years, and look, they're absolutely just fantastic, as are you, Lynn. So yes, in terms of the social procurement, within the work of the change strategy, we do have an action within that says that the Department of Justice will have 10% of their contracts by the end of the strategy will have some form of a social or green public procurement within it. We're working on that, okay, we'll say that. However, the prison service are really romping home, okay, so very much like what you were saying, Karen, like we have to be thinking differently. We have to think different, like in terms of the funding for projects. It's not just about grant funding, as Paul was saying. We have to allow people the opportunity to become customers or providers. And for social enterprises in particular, even today, for example, fair play to IPRT and to NIACRO for having a social enterprise provide the catering for this event. They hire people with from marginalised backgrounds, including people with criminal histories. So it's spending wisely. And I think, as I said, the prisons, excuse me, the prison service are really kind of leading the way on it at the moment. In fact, they just won a European award, the Procura Award. They came runner-up. They should have won. That was my bias. But because they did something and changed how they buy stuff. So they basically put out a contract for the recycling and I suppose whatever reuse of the prison mattresses. It had an environmental impact, very positive one. They were previously going to buried landfill. The two social enterprises got the contract, one in Galway, who employ members of the travelling community, and then one here in Dublin, Bounce Back Recycling and Eco Mattress. That's created 4 full-time jobs for people with criminal histories. So it's a win-win-win for exactly the same amount of money. So we have to think differently about how we're spending, everybody. And what I would even say for the community and voluntary sector is think wisely, buy social, and that will have an impact on the people that you're working with who may not be ready for employment. So lots is happening now, but lots more could be done.
Brilliant, thanks Siobhan. There's a woman just here.
I just want to thank IPRT and NIACRO for organising this fantastic event and hearing the very encouraging stories of the people that have set up social enterprises, and obviously Lynn's work as well on the legislation on spent convictions is great to hear. I just wanted to flag something very quickly, is that 1,000 people, Irish people, serving prison sentences are serving them in other countries. So I just wanted to really flag the issues, some of the issues that they have. In particular, they're not covered by the existing spent conviction legislation. So when they come back to Ireland, and we know that obviously the spent conviction legislation is very minimal, so it doesn't cover a lot of people, but nobody coming back from serving a sentence in other countries are protected by that legislation. As well as the other difficulties that Irish people who have served sentences in Ireland have experienced. Often people coming back will have had no training or no education within the prison system because they won't be eligible to it as foreign national prisoners. So I suppose for me the important thing is that people that are returning for having served a sentence abroad should be covered by whatever initiatives that are in existence in Ireland and by the spent convictions legislation.
Yes. I'm trying to think, because I'm trying to, and I might throw Fiona on the spot here, but didn't we have conversations early on in the spent convictions legislation around about how not in relation to travel, but about when you have convictions abroad and then you come home and how them convictions apply at home. I'm trying to stretch into 3 years ago in my mind here, so you're going to have to forgive me. And I've just thrown Fiona in there as well. But I just remember there being a conversation at the time. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
What the issue was.
I do. I think it was just that the legislation could only apply within this particular jurisdiction, but there are many more people here today who would respond to that.
But what I'm thinking, am I right in saying then that like they would be protected by the legislation here in the sense that they haven't got a conviction here, so like your Garda vetting wouldn't pick up other countries anyway, would it? It was the sharing of information. It depends on the region, wasn't it? It was whether it was in the EU or outside. Actually, it was country to country basis. I think you would need a piece on country to country basis within the legislation in terms of the relationship between the two. Right, that's what it was. I think it was so It was actually really hard to do.
Exactly what she said.
Which is why I'm struggling to explain it. But there was discussion, but you're right, there needs to be a way to make that stuff happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose, as a person that lived in the UK and moved back here, they go all the way back when they do a background check on you. Anyways, I had to, as part of the disclosure process, you have to tell everybody where you lived. You don't give dates of where you live. So a vast amount of addresses, included no address. And they go all the way back. So, but ultimately, it's really, if you're offending here in Ireland, you're going to come up against that problem. Do you know what I mean? But it's a difficult one.
Thank you. Any more questions? What time are we at? So we've room for one or two questions. Down the back.
Hi, I just wanted to ask about women prisoners, coming out of prison, also, having their own family responsibilities and then access to employment. So just interested to hear thoughts on that.
Anyone?
We had a really, really interesting event in the Doka Centre on the Common Purpose Emerging Leaders Programme, where we had roundtable discussions with people that have been that are in the system. Governors are there, inmates, and all that type of thing. We got a tour of the prison, and we heard stories about people kind of doing short sentences and being released and then back in for another short sentence. And it was intergenerational, It's like one lady in particular really springs to mind. She would have been, as a child, removed from her parents, and along with her siblings, and put into care. And now she finds herself in a similar situation, where and her hopes for the future is to hit the ground running again. She's doing a hairdressing course at the moment, but these short sentences, this lady goes in for 3 months, she loses her house, she loses her children, she loses all of the supports that she's got on the outside, however minimal they are, and then she's not in prison long enough to have any meaningful intervention either. I think it was on the PIPS, Progress in the Penal System there, 2,420 people in Ireland as of April 2022 are serving sentences of less than 12 months. How beneficial are they, Would serving some sort of a work programme in the community not be a better use of that, or a better sanction, or a better solution to short sentences that have no meaningful impact on anybody?
I think, Damien, I might actually ask if Grace doesn't mind me throwing her in, and maybe Grace could make a comment or two on that if anyone wants to give her the mic.
Yeah, thanks. I think Damien spoke very well there in relation to the women's issues. Definitely a lot of the women we're working with and supporting, we have a group in the Docas actually every week, every Wednesday. They're doing life sentences by instalment. But then for the women in the community, one of the biggest issues I'm seeing is a lack of quality employment. So even when they break through the barriers and get offered employment, it's not realistic. They're being asked to be available 7 days a week, no affordable childcare, no one to mind their mum or dad, or whatever other additional responsibilities women tend to have. So I don't want to make it a male-female issue, because we're all in this together, but there are additional barriers for the women. And I think the lack of an open prison is a huge issue as well. The lack of the chance to do more community release and day activities. Would anyone else like to say anything on that? Grant, thanks.
Grant, thank you, Grace.
The work that we've been doing with NIACRO and business in the community and the prisons within Northern Ireland, it is a question we're doing, that kind of employability piece. It's a question that we're asked frequently around start times, and I know our industry is slightly different because most people are expected to be on site at 7 o'clock in the morning, and some of those females may have care responsibility. So we're doing a lot of work with our supply chain and our subcontractors around being more flexible in their employment opportunities and looking at working hours as well. So it's a big piece of work that I think not just our industry but wider industries need to do to support that and giving those access into employment. So.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. Fiona had a question, and then I think I'll finish on that, if that's okay.
Actually, it's more a response, so thanks so much, Lynn. I just want to respond to behalf of the probation service and just to point out, or just to share with everyone here, that our strategy clearly commits to finding opportunities for people with convictions histories to participate in the work of the service. And this includes full support of the Working to Change strategy led by Siobhan over there. It also includes, development of a service user engagement strategy, and really importantly, it includes finding opportunities for people to come and work with the probation service. But it's fair to say we're at the very beginning of this, so we'll be engaging with other people in the room here and bringing that forward, but it's exciting, it's a direction of travel. And in terms of the procurement, really interesting, can't answer for that on behalf of the probation service, but we'll definitely be bringing that back. So thanks to everybody for their engagement and commitment today. It's been a really great morning.
Brilliant. Thank you. Siobhan, go on.
Yeah, thanks Fiona. Now it's feeling like bridesmaids, where they're competing for the microphone. I won't start singing. Sorry, I should have acknowledged. Yes, the probation service for the past number of years have also been. They're a less of a spender in a way. They don't, it's more the funding side of things. So I think in terms of the procurement, in similar ways, it's if there's an event and you need a pull-up stand, that purchasing that from a social enterprise again has the same impact. And I know that some of the awards that the probation service have given to your staff over the past number of years have also come from social enterprise. I think that's something that, in my apologies, I should have acknowledged that. But again, more to do. And I think if I could just come back on that female point, I think one of the things that we need to acknowledge within the criminal justice sector is just because the label of offender is on someone, it doesn't mean that their needs and wants are all the same. And in fact, when they're not a homogenous group, I think it's okay for us to say that actually females do have different needs. Members of the traveller community, Eastern Europeans, people who don't have English as their first language, we have to acknowledge as soon as we start to put in bespoke responses is when we get the better outcomes. And I think we need to start to change the narrative from one of offender to one of skills and talents and resilience. And I think that when we do that, that's really when we start to make those changes for those individuals, and then we give them the opportunity to flourish, which many do, as we can see here today.
Thank you, Siobhan.
Fiona, over to you.
That's a great note to... No, it's me! So listen, I think that's a great note to finish on. I think I'm going to correct Siobhan when she says that it has the same impact in terms of who whether you take for social enterprise. I think we need to get the message across that it has a greater impact, and it might not be only measured in terms of the cost of the tender or the cost of the procurement of that organisation, but its impact on all other areas of life and human impact is actually much greater. So it has a better impact to actually have the social enterprise clause. And so I'd like to thank Paul and Karen and Damien, and I think it was a really positive panel. I think it was really powerful, but I think positive, powerful, I'm going for an alliteration. I think procurement is definitely something that's just, I didn't expect to arrive today as a thing that actually is another way for us to all work together. So positive, powerful and procurement. Great, thank you, have lunch. Bye.